welcome back. Hopefully you enjoyed that first talk from Bishop Jim and enjoyed some either reflection time if you're at home on your own, or some conversation with the folks you're gathered with if you're together at the parish or your school today. Our keynote this morning is going to be delivered by Ryan O'Hara, who's a longtime friend to the diocese. He's done men's retreats and Advent days of reflection and other retreats all around the diocese. And he has a wonderful talk prepared for us on what is our mission as a church, and specifically as catechists, as Catholic school teachers, as leaders in the formation of young people. So please enjoy this time. Afterwards, we've got some reflection questions for you in the handouts that got emailed out in advance. Please invest in those. Process Ryan's really rich but practical and applicable message together. And we look forward to seeing you sometime soon around the diocese. God bless you.
Hello, Diocese of Superior. My name is Ryan O'Hara, and I'm really excited to join you today for this great event. I'm filming this from my basement, which my 15-year-old and I turned into a studio during COVID. We needed a little bit of a kind of creative outlet, and this happened. My wife and I live here in West St. Paul with our three sons, 14, 15, and 16-year-olds. And we have three other teenagers who live with us and a toddler as well. We have a full, exciting life day to day around here. And I'm really excited to spend a few minutes with each of you today. Many of us on this call and a part of this event are educators. We're Catholic school teachers or administrators or youth ministers or, DREs. And there are some topics that are more difficult than others to talk about or to teach. And one such topic, and I've had this experience now 4 times, is the birds and the bees. I still think back to my own experience, my mom trying to communicate this to me on the way home from school in the car. I'm in the back seat, kind of wishing she would just get to the point or stop. But it can be really hard and really challenging. And every time we have these conversations, I'm struck by the utter miracle of life and this cooperation between a man, a woman, and God, and the incredible reality that unfolds there, and a new life is born. And so this is absolutely shocking if you really think about it. And I think we take a lot of it for granted, but if you start to look at how likely is it that you or I actually made it here. Harvard Business Review, not too long ago, did a great study on the probability of you, or probability of me, the probability of any of us. And the number that they came up with is 1 in 10 to the 2.685 millionth power. That's 1 in 10 plus 2.685 million zeros. And again, just to put that in perspective, that's a really big number. There are the number of atoms in an adult male is 10 to the 27th power. The number of atoms on Earth, 10 to the 50th power. And the number of atoms in the universe is 10 to the 80th power. And here, the improbability of you is 1 in 10 to the 2.685 millionth power. Just to put that into perspective, imagine 2 million people, each given a trillion-sided dice, all of them rolling that dice all at once, and every one of them landing on the exact same number. That's the unlikelihood of any of us. And yet, we know that the scriptures kind of raise the stakes even more. We're not here by chance. We are not an accident. There is great intention and care and love, even at our very conception. Because it says in Psalm 139 that God says, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you." So that means that before God knits us together in our mother's womb, he was basing that on his knowledge of us. And so from all eternity, we have been known in the mind and heart of God. And then when it came time for us to be conceived and born, that is when he did his handiwork in putting us together so beautifully, so fearfully, and so wonderfully made, as the scriptures say. And so this truth, this unlikelihood of me or the unlikelihood of you, really hit home not too long ago when my older sister sent me a story, a copy, like a digital copy of a story from 1965. This story was about my dad, Bill O'Hara. That's 1965. I was born in 1974. But in 1965, he landed in the wrong place at the wrong time. He was driving his truck. He ended up stalling out on a train track. And a train, the Rock Island Rocket, comes and shears off the front engine of his car, the front end of his car. And I said, wow, I'm like 2 feet, 3 feet away from not being here at all. That was a really close call. At the same time, to kind of raise the stakes a little bit more, it hit me, and I knew this all along, but when I saw this article, it hit me, where was my mom at that time, 1965? Well, here's where my mom was at that time, a religious sister, a sister of Providence in Terre Haute, Indiana. So, like Back to the Future, it looked like that photo of me was starting to fade. It wasn't very likely that I was going to make it. And as I considered both of those two things that were happening, I felt like God spoke something to me. It was as though he said, Ryan, I meant for you to be here. And just like that, I was just struck by the goodness of God, the love of God, the fact that he thought it was a good idea for me to make it here. And as I thought about that, how I sensed that he said that to me, that he meant for me to be here, what I also had a sense of was that there's a mission connected to that, that I'm here on purpose, for a purpose. And I guess I was just lucky enough to have the newspaper clipping to kind of see that close call and to get that sense that God was bringing all things together literally for my good, even to exist in the first place. And, you know, I had the benefit of the newspaper clipping. I wish that you could too. Maybe you know of some near misses in your history that might have changed things for you. But if we all had that same information, I think God would give us that same strong impression that you are meant to be here. You're not here by accident. The improbability of you is mind-boggling, and here you are. You are precious, you are loved, and irreplaceable. Mark Twain has been quoted as saying, "The two most important days of your life are the day you were born and the day you figure out why." Now, that's a really powerful quote. But unfortunately, there are many people who's like, I'm not so sure Mark Twain actually said that. It's kind of like that St. Francis quote, you know, that we should preach the gospel at all times and if necessary, use words. Some people aren't so sure if he said that either. I think I might be one of them. I mean, the guy would preach to the birds. He had gospel words for the birds. I think we could have gospel words for people. But anyway, so there, you know, sometimes quotes, we're not really sure where they came from. So maybe we could change it up a little bit on this Mark Twain quote. How about this? The two most important days of your life are the day you were baptized and the day you figure out why. And when we try to answer the question, why were we baptized? We go right to the Gospels and we see Jesus' call of Peter and the other apostles there. He says, "Come follow me and I'll make you fishers of men." See, right away, he is saying the call to discipleship and the call to mission go hand in hand. It wasn't that he said, "Come follow me and I will make you holy, or come follow me and I'll make you a nice person, or come follow me and I'll make you happy. No, he said, come follow me, and then I'm going to make you fishers of men. That discipleship and mission go together. And so we see this actually in our Holy Father today. Pope Francis has been saying for the last number of years that we're all called, all the baptized are called to be missionary disciples. There's not two calls, a call to be a missionary, a call to be a disciple. They're one call. They go together. You can't separate the two. So as missionary disciples, in the fact that all of us are made for mission, we're meant to be here, that we're not here just on purpose, we have a purpose, I want to share 3 reminders. And the first reminder for all of us going into this academic and ministry year, the first reminder is that all of us are in the disciple-making business. Just by sheer connection to the church, by being in a Catholic school, by being in religious education in a Catholic context, the main thing that we are all doing and all moving towards, we're all making disciples. And yes, I know for many of us, if you're a teacher or if you're a youth minister or a director of religious education, there's tons of forms and lesson plans and emails and spreadsheets and phone calls and meetings. But all of that is at the service of helping to make disciples, to educate the whole person, to include not just the academics and the service projects, but their spiritual lives and them growing in relationship with God towards what God wants in their life. That's the mission of the church. And sometimes I think, especially in this kind of COVID season that's been prolonged, we can kind of get off the mark and start to focus on things that don't always aim us at the main thing. And so we will see great reward every time we lead young people into a better relationship and into better knowledge of who God is and the love that God has for them and the beauty and truth and goodness that we can encounter in the context of the Catholic Church. And so we're in the disciple-making business. That's the reminder number 1. So when Jesus started making disciples and then calling them to be fishers of men, that first encounter with Peter at the side on the shore there of the Sea of Galilee, they had just come in, these fishermen, Peter one of them, from a long night fishing, and they had caught nothing. They were exhausted. They were exasperated. And what does Jesus say? Basically, go back out and put out into the deep. And there's 2 reasons why he's going to say put out into the deep. 1, that's where the fish are. 2, but it's also where Peter's faith in Jesus would need to be exercised. And why is that? Why, when God might say to you or say to me, put out into the deep? Well, in the deep, you can't see the shore so easily, and you can't see the bottom. And so you have to rely on faith. So we get put into the deep in a lot of different situations in ministry and in schoolwork. And there's a lot of times where we feel like I can't just rely on myself. I need some supernatural help to keep things moving forward. Perhaps you felt that way in a particular way these last 18 months going through this COVID experience, which turned everything upside down. Talk about being outside of our comfort zones. It has called me into a much deeper and radical commitment of faith than I even knew was possible in so many different ways. Perhaps that's been your experience. So not only are we in the disciple-making business, this experience that we've all had and this experience that Peter had of being called to put out into the deep where his faith was required, the next reminder is that we're in the humanly impossible business. It's hard. It's hard to educate the whole person. It's hard to lead young people into a deep and committed relationship with God. It's hard to do all of that remotely. It's hard to do all of that on Zoom. It's hard to manage all the expectations that this family and that family has, and this parent and that parent. And it has been an ordeal for all of us. And here we are. We're in the humanly impossible business. And how this plays out, it was never supposed to be easy for us to begin with. Because we see in verses like John 15, where Jesus says to the disciples and to us, apart from me, you can do nothing. And he also says in the Gospels later that with him, with God, all things are possible. And so for us, so often we forget that we have this gift of faith, that we can actually move through difficulties, through things that seem almost impossible, that somehow God can bring it all together. And he does. And when we go in faith, our faith grows. Anytime you exercise or put a virtue, even a theological one like faith or hope or love, anytime you put a virtue into practice, it grows. These are like our inside muscles. Anytime you exercise, you grow and you get stronger. And anytime you exercise a virtue, it grows, it gets strengthened. But faith doesn't always equal go. Sometimes faith equals wait or stop. And so for us, I think oftentimes we think faith equals go. Faith can often mean wait, and faith can often mean stop. So I don't know where you're at in life. If faith is looking more like go, if that's where you're at, go for it. If faith looks more like stop or wait, I want to share what I think may be helpful to give us some perspective of how God can be in that as well. So I was thinking, I wonder if there's a situation in the natural world that kind of imitates this tension between faith meaning go or faith meaning wait or stop. And when you look at the two different types of energy, you have kinetic energy, which is the energy of momentum and movement. And you have potential energy, which is the energy of position or gravity. And the energy of the kinetic energy is kind of like faith that moves. That's the energy of momentum of a rock rolling down a hill or waves moving toward the shore. But the energy of position or gravity is kind of like the strength that comes as God in faith is asking us to wait or to stop altogether. And there's a particular verse that I think shows us how this works. But before that, I think it's helpful to understand a bit more about potential energy. Have you ever seen the Hoover Dam or been to the Hoover Dam? It's a stunning structure in the middle of the Arizona desert. And you've got the Colorado River flowing. And at one point, they dammed up the river. And as that happens, the river rises. And that power and strength is contained in position, and gravity, as the waters are released, creates energy. And so that power is stored up and then it's released. And that's a beautiful image, I think, for where some of us might be in our spiritual life right now, or in our work life right now, our ministry life. It could be that Jesus is inviting us to wait and to stop. And so the scriptures in Isaiah 43, share that very notion. Let me read it to you. Isaiah 40. God gives power to the faint, and to him who has no might, he increases strength. Even youths shall faint and be weary, and young men shall fall exhausted. But those who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not grow faint. So it says those who will wait for the Lord will renew their strength. And so wherever you may be, if this humanly impossible disciple-making business that we're called into is God inviting you to move on something, to trust Him, to act in a particular way, to change, to grow, to go. We can see that clearly. We see that all over the Scriptures. But sometimes the Lord might be asking us to exercise faith by slowing down, by holding back, by waiting for Him to bring things together. And as we do that, as we wait, the Scriptures say that we are being strengthened. And I hope that that can be an encouragement to you. But the last reminder is really where that strengthening happens. Because not only are we in the disciple-making business or the humanly impossible business, we're also in the abiding business. What does that mean? Well, that word abide is used in the Scriptures a number of places, but my favorite place where that comes out is in John 15, where Jesus invites us and His disciples to remain on the vine. That Jesus is the vine, we're the branches. Jesus is the vine, we're the branches. And we are supposed to remain in Him, or as one translation says, abide in Him. And what that's saying is that there's meant to be a close personal connection, that we are receiving life and fruit and all the nutrients, spiritual and otherwise, that we need from Jesus. And that happens in a couple of places, but the first place we see it is in the sacraments, through the forgiveness of confession and the life, death, and resurrection that we celebrate and we receive in the Eucharist, that we receive the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ in the Eucharist. And so that's the first way we receive the life of Jesus from the sacraments. But secondly, and a place where we can continue to grow, is in daily prayer, is in a regular personal conversation with God. And that's a commitment that I've made. I hope that's a commitment that you've made to support you in your work in Catholic schools, in your work in ministry, that we would stay close to Jesus. He has such a strong desire to spend time with you, to speak with you, to communicate His love for you, His plan, His provision, His direction, His great joy over you. And for me, I start in the Scriptures. I spend time each day slowly reading and thinking carefully, and then talking with God about what I read in the Bible. I read through the 3 daily readings that the Church uses at daily Mass. So I get something from the Old or New Testament, a psalm, and a gospel reading. And I read them slowly and carefully, and when something sticks out, I stop and I circle it and I begin a conversation with God. He's trying to get my attention. And so if He's drawing something to my attention, I want to begin to talk to Him about that. And then I usually try and make some sort of simple resolution for that day based on what I've read and prayed about and heard from God that day. God loves you. God cares so deeply about you. And the work you are doing is changing lives in the Diocese of Superior. Not just this year, but for many, many, many years to come, because we're a part of making disciples. One of the most important decisions and commitments that any person would make is that choice to put Jesus at the center of their life, to follow Him, and to hopefully become fishers of men, to fish for others and to be on mission as well. Because remember, we're made for mission, and so what that means is we have to remember We're in the disciple making business, we're in the humanly impossible business, but let's make sure we're also in the abiding business as well. Thanks so much for taking this time, and it's been such an honor to be with you.